Hey there, friends. I've been putting out new YouTubes at lower frequency than usual, but I'm going to just pick up where I left off. I always do the same themes anyway, right? Partly, I think in terms of opportunity costs per GST diagrams and how we could tell the story, whatever story, right? So, story time here. Gargoyle in the backyard. This is me telling a story. And I'm going to go back to an earlier discussion in the Bucky literature where he does intersect, and I'm talking when I say Bucky, about one Buckminster Fuller, Richard Buckminster Fuller. Sometimes you can use honorific Dr. Fuller. He had lots of honorary degrees, and I think that's, even PhDs, something when they give you free of charge, whereas most people have to spend lots to get, you got to get your degree is something they don't just give to you. And it sort of sets a bar for that institution. What does this piece of paper mean? I think if you gave Bucky a degree, that was a smart investment. That's what I think. Anyway, going back to whatchamacallit, Synergio, I've been jumping in on not overclaiming for the Bucky literature. In other words, yeah, back in the 50s, it was really new. X ray diffraction, detection of icosahedral elements inside the virus gave rise to understanding eventually of the nucleocapsid being sharply icosahedral, as in this picture of the herpes virus. And what we've been discussing on this list is how, as far as I know anyway, this so called coronavirus is not of this type. It has internally helical, like a braid, more like a braid, like a spiral staircase going around and around with the RNA strand inside of it. And it's just floating in there, you could say. And then around it is this membrane. And sure, that membrane in turn is something we can analyze. And what I admit in this thread, because everyone's saying, oh no, all viruses are icosahedral, in the sense that even that surrounding bubble, this M membrane or matrix, whatever they call it, that too could be analyzed in terms of icosahedral symmetry. And I'm saying maybe so, but that's not what the Bucky literature back in the 50s had to do with. I'm just correcting or not over claiming, because there's always an opportunity here with the octet truss, Alexander Graham Bell, some of the stuff I touch on in the current camps, right? So I am in my third version of this. I kind of got taken by surprise because I got started in the first version not having read the camp description myself, and based on what I was pasted on my dashboard as curriculum, it looked like we were going to do Pi game. So I spent like a couple hours getting that working. But you'll notice that the description that got published, which I did not write and didn't know about at first, never mentions Pi game in particular. So we do Pi game and a ton of other stuff, right? Pi charm. We look at the whole idea of an IDE, but we focus much more on the whole idea of a repo, a Git repo in particular. And I've got links to Coding Train for that. I've got links to data science. And why? Because really we're pioneering what we call the gray zone on our ladder, which is high school and above, right? So we're going on up the ladder for ourselves, figure out, many different instructors will try this differently. And I'm like from the open source tradition, and this is the way it makes sense to me to share curriculum. I'm very open source about it. And this is a Jupyter notebook that is not what you're looking at here on the GitHub server, but on my laptop. And it's interactive here. But I show them about my binder. There's like Docker-based services out there, or container-based, that will just at the time on demand install the versions of Python and Pygame or whatever. In this case, Jupyter Notebook in my binder, and you can run these things live in the cloud. And we do some of that. Now, how much do I link to the Bucky stuff in this? Like, I spent quite a bit of time with them yesterday, not so much on all the theory behind pi or anything like that, but how do you get How do you get an animated GIF embedded in a Jupyter notebook? That's the kind of skill. And this, Ramanujan thing, yes, I made the link between the sigma and a for loop. And, the code's right under here. So if you're already in high school, then okay, arbitrary precision computation of pi based on a Ramanujan identity, right? I could see doing that and checking to see, using the decimal module or GIMP2, whether my answer agrees with published answers for pi out to whatever number of digits. That sounds like an interesting experiment. I don't, in this camp, get into the idea of a generator that deeply with the yield, but that is actually the best way to implement. And another iteration of the camp I could, right? This would be my excuse where I would dive in. But where am I here? I'm not actually in my camp at this point. I've jumped to another repo that I share from 4D Solutions, but the camp and me, we have our own separate identities. But by connecting, and exploring and poking around, somebody with high school level skills or something could, make those cross links. And especially around databases, right? Because I'm trying to store polyhedra vectors in a SQL database and pull those up and actually put them on the screen. But again, this is not directly what we're getting into in this particular camp. Yesterday we got this thing working and so forth. So I'll talk to you about the virus again, probably, but I'll talk to you probably, it'll be like another week or so. And by then I'll be back to adults for andragogy, right? Andragogy and pedagogy. I'm learning to mix them. I remember how Sesame Street the talent behind Sesame Street was very focused on this works with adults too. And, the later success of the Muppets and all that bore that out, of course. And it's not just a matter of the generation that was raised on Sesame Street continuing to want to see those characters. Yes, that's part of it, a big part of it. But the whole idea that cartoons and puppets and all that sort of genre can be aimed at adults, we know that from political cartoons. We learned that as far back as Homer Davenport here from Silverton, Oregon. But that was in the Hearst era, and political cartoons go before then, right? So another big topic, by the way, on the screen here, artwork by the kids and me. We work together on the whiteboard sometimes from our respective personal workspaces. And then I save them. They know I'm going to save them. And then I share them. All right. Talk to you soon. Bye bye.